My name's Jacka. I've been doing analytics, web analytics, for a fairly long time, probably since the mid-90s. And in the last 13 years, I've been running a small company called Panalysis, and we do consulting in the area of web analytics and conversion optimization. So I reckon I hold about 3 titles in my role, one of which is Managing Director to kind of keep the company afloat. The second is the Chief Pointing Out the Bleeding Obvious Officer, because what I'll talk about today, and you might associate conversion optimization with things like landing page tests and what button does better than another button. That's kind of a very small part of it, and I do emphasize a very small part of it. The last thing I do in my other title is I'm also called the Chief Dinosaur Wrangler of Dinosaurs Galore. It's a little business that I run to keep my staff honest, because we eat our own dog food in my house. That's a kids' toy site, so if you have kids that like dinosaurs, check it out. It's got a lot of fun stuff on it. It keeps us kind of entertained and amused whilst we do the serious business of optimising for our clients. Our clients include people like Optus and Toyota and kind of quite a lot of the big names. And I have done this, as I said, for a very long time, and I can tell you all sorts of techniques that will probably make a difference to your business. But amongst all is just knowing where to look to find the bleeding obvious. And so that's where I'll kick off onto that. And I've got a clicker that works? Yep. Good-o. Now, to kind of set the scene here, I've got a new house. I've renovated my house. I knocked most of it down. I rebuilt it, and we spent a lot of money on it. And so I thought, okay, well, it's getting to be summer. I need a screen door on the front. And I want a secure screen door because I don't want anybody just to be able to walk in. I like to be able to leave the house open and let some ventilation come through. So I do what most of us do in this case, is to try and find a short list of suppliers who can supply such a thing. And I went to do a search in Google, and I clicked on an AdWords ad. And in some person's opinion, they have decided to present me with a squeeze page. Let's just take a moment to reflect on that. What have I done? I've just built a house. I spent a lot of money. I want to get a screen door. Do you think this is going to do it? Why not? Can't see the door. Can't see the door. Bleeding obvious. Why would I want to get a quote on something unseen? Now, this is a byproduct of conversion optimization. Somebody said, look, get the squeeze page, get the leads, sell them. Goose? Jesus. So one of the things here is to go back and look at what else could happen. Well, being reasonably intelligent, I took the end of the URL off and went back to their homepage. Had a look there and I thought, well, okay, well, still kind of close, but not quite. Let's see what they've got to look at. Now, on my iPad, we've got a timber house, so I'm kind of keen on the timber doors. It doesn't render very well. It's kind of all out of space. It's all kind of looking a bit wonky. It still doesn't kind of do it. And I finally get to their contact form, and I thought, okay, I'll work it out. I got it. Let's just see what happens. I mean, they've kind of almost broken the deal, but I'm persevering here. I fill out their contact form, and I hit the page. So what am I thinking now? Am I going to get a call? Well, actually, they did come through, and I took pity on them, and I bought their door, but only under duress. Now, just because that's a smaller company, bigger ones are no better. Here's one from Bunnings. Now I've typed in secure screen door, and I'm on my mobile phone now. I click on their ad. What do I get? Everything but a secure screen door. Now this is what I mean about being the chief pointing out the bleeding obvious officer, because this is conversion optimization. Before we even think about getting to what we do about landing pages, we need to engineer the user's experience. We need to work out, how do people come into this process, how do we talk to them at the right point, and how do we make a difference? Now, I don't know if anybody's come across this. Have you seen this book? Yes. Yeah, it's great. It's worth having a look at. It's actually a couple of years old. It's still very, very, very poignant. Google put it out, called The Zero Moment of Truth. And what they're trying to do is talk about the interrelationships between the various media and how do we approach the sales process, or in our case, the buying process. We're not talking about a sales process, we're actually talking about a buying process. We're talking about a person having a need who's going out there researching and trying to find the best solution or option for their purpose. And as we can see, it's quite a big mess. I mean, people moving between various different combinations of things. And a huge number of overlaps. Now, I don't know if I'm kind of a bit out there or not, but in my household, I counted we had 12 different devices that could connect to the internet for 3 people. I think that might be a bit over the top, but I mean, who here would honestly only use the one device for every single interaction you have online? Nobody. 2 devices? Probably a few, but who's got less than say 4 devices that they might use? Yeah, kind of getting about that. Mobile phone, laptop, tablet, maybe a desktop PC. That's the way the world works. And until we get the one magic device, perhaps the Apple wristwatch or the Google Glass, where it is our single view of the world, and that is unique and personalised to us, this is reality. So what we really need to be thinking about is how do we optimise for this? And it gets worse. There's another screen from the book. Now, what do we do? Well, these are the key points. Between your offer and your customer is a journey. And that journey is not linear. It's certainly going to cross many devices, and it may also cross a lot of time, depending on what you are selling. What our process of conversion optimization is to look at that process and find out how can we improve it simply by finding the friction or points where things break. Pretty straightforward. Why we do it? Because we hopefully can make a bit more money, we can reduce waste, and we can make things a little bit better for our customers. Excuse me. Oh, that's water, great. Now, it's horses for courses because if I'm selling an insurance product, the purchase cycle is very different. I'll come to some slide in a moment to show you a little bit of what that might look like. Or if I'm buying a car, again, a little different in terms of how do I buy this product. And if I'm buying a TV, probably much shorter. We work out a consideration area. How big's the TV I want? What brands are available? Who's got it? What is the price? How can I get it on Saturday? What stock do you have? How do the salespeople interact with you when you get to the store? All of those things are very influential on whether this sale occurs. Now, we could look at a few examples, and I will speed through this because I do have to be out of here. Apologies, things are running a little bit late today, but I need to be out of here just after 6. So I will just quickly whip through this. The slides will be available, I think. Yeah, send around, yep. Short cycles for commodity products, discretionary products, longer or maybe shorter. We don't know. It's all about the particular product we're selling. But the one point I do want to make quite strongly is, who's heard that term conversion rate optimization? Stupid term. Don't use it. How do I optimize a rate? Well, a rate is one number over another. We've got a numerator and a denominator. I make the denominator smaller. I get rid of the traffic that doesn't sell. Easy. I've optimized your rate. Why is it simplistic? Well, that's a trite example. But it doesn't take into account multiple interactions. It doesn't take into account how do I go between devices. It doesn't take into account the purchasing journey. So, stupid word, don't like it. Now, smoking guns are very rare. Now, sometimes I get into one of these sites, and I've had a couple, where you just say, look, do that. That will work, and it just works. But really, they are very, very, very rare. Most of the things are like that example I opened with. They are small, subtle things that make a big difference, but incrementally, they don't make a huge difference. But put them all together, things just start to work a little bit more efficiently. Now, let's talk about some real examples here. Now, Oxfam Shop, this is a little bit old. I use it because it's quite a good one. I actually did this about 3 years ago for Oxfam Shop when they were a client back then. Oxfam Shop, great for Christmas gifts. Really recommend you buy from them. They produce, they don't produce, they buy from small producers in developing countries. Small batches of things like, bags and cushions and rugs and decorative items. They get money into those countries, into those communities, which helps them to develop. It's a very simple business model. Now, this data is a little easier to get now with enhanced e-commerce with Google Analytics. This actually took quite a lot of work to get the data out of Google Analytics into this format. Much easier today with the new features. What we're seeing here is the product, the number of times it's being viewed, roughly the number of sessions that it has been viewed, and the number of purchases. This one table tells me a lot about what's going on. Now we can see these ones with the yellow line have 0 purchases. Instant flag. Why would we have something with 1,200 views from 1,100 sessions getting 0 purchases? Prime territory for optimisation. Well, when we looked at this, we have a lot of out-of-stock problems. So our very first recommendation, perhaps a smoking gun, I don't know, is put in a form that says, tell me when the item's on reorder. Now, we can't necessarily order more of this stuff because the manufacturer may have only made 200 or 300 of them, and that's all we have, and there is probably a 12-week lead cycle to get another 200 or 300 of them. But what this does is it serves at least 2 purposes. One, it gives Oxfam enough reason to contact that customer again by email when that item does reappear. And 2, it gives the manufacturer of that product an idea of the demand for it. Very valuable, just all small subtle things, so they can order more of this, confident that there is some demand for that product. Number 2, we're trying to lift the price point. Now, Oxfam sell lots of cheap stuff, chocolate bars for $5 and things like that. So their spread of product in terms of price point is over here. Now, how do I get the average basket price up? Well, I'm not sure any retailers in the room. Okay, well, it's pretty simple. You try and put free shipping, or you try and put an incentive to push people up. And so I spoke to the client and I said, look, let's do a free shipping offer. First thing you'll do as an e-commerce consultant, put free shipping in and see what it does. They said, we want to do it at $100. And I said, well, let's look at your pricing here. 50% of your sales are less than $60. 75% of your sales coming up to $100. Now, sure, that's a pretty big gap. That's $40 we've got to make up by putting a free shipping offer. Would I go and add a $40 item to receive a free shipping offer? I don't think so. That was my hunch. So we took a bit of a midway point and said, look, let's experiment with what happens at an $80 shipping level. We did the maths. We worked out we could afford it, at least on a pilot basis, to see how it went. So we did a postcard campaign, very old-fashioned. 12,000 postcards went out in the post. Each of them had a different offer, or had one of 2 offers, sorry. The first, the control, you get some tea or some coffee if you buy more than $20 worth. The second, exactly the same offer, but free shipping over $80 in the order value. So let's see what happened. Well, we exceeded our $80 value by a fair margin. $116 was our average order value. Now, what happened there? Well, it's a little bit like another story I'll tell you, which is about the American political campaign that led up to the previous election. The political party wanted people to put in the banners, those big posters in their front yard. And so they tried a few people, said, will you put this in your front yard, support your local candidate? No, I'm not going to put that in my front yard. Geez, it's asked a bit much here. But what they did do is ask them to put in a little A4 flyer in their window first, and then came back a fortnight later and said, would you therefore put the poster in your front garden? And the answer to that was a lot more yes than the previous exercise that they had there. So we had kind of like an incremental effect. So by saying to somebody that dangling a carrot, you just $20 away, you've got a free shipping. Shipping's going to cost you $15. It's, well, $5 is worth, that seems worth it. I'll put something in, but it's very hard to find a product at exactly $20. And so, well, that's kind of good. That's it. Well, that's $40. I'll put that in. And of course, I've exceeded the free shipping threshold and the money's being made. So it's a playing on, I suppose, on that kind of principle of how do I influence behaviour by setting incentives for that to occur. Now, a little bit of a chart here. That's how their orders above $80 happened. So at the time of the campaign, ran right up quite a lot above that. And it's an interesting thing. And that was sustained for quite a while afterwards. And they've done several experiments. But it was a very interesting, fairly simple, fairly low-cost way of looking for gains by knowing where to look and doing a simple test. Now, the process of this is really about understanding what does the client want to improve. And that's always a very hard thing to say, because they say, oh, yeah, we want sales to go up, or they may have some preconceived idea that our product descriptions need to be changed, or our forms suck, or people dropping out of the checkout process. There'll be a number of those sorts of things will come up. They're not necessarily the cause, they're the symptoms. And so trying to unpack that is a really difficult thing, and that's where as an analyst, we've got to look at data from tools like Google Analytics to find out what are the friction points that are likely to be occurring there. Now, if we don't identify what to improve, we end up with button land. You know, okay, I've got a blue button, I want a green button, blue is better than green, or headline should be this versus headline should be that. It's really facile. We're testing small things. We're not changing. We're not changing to kind of get the big stuff. We're not solving for the ultimate problem. We're solving for a very small problem. And when we solve for a small problem, we get small results. And often when you find these things, you run the test, it looks like, oh, you've got a statistically significant difference on the blue button, and you run the test again 2 weeks later and you're back to normal. Those sorts of things, is kind of just say, beware of that. I mean, yes, hypothesis testing is valuable, should be done, but it needs to be done smartly and for big things. Unless, of course, you're eBay or Amazon, you don't have the traffic to test for small things. You need to test for big things. Okay, let's look at a bit of a case study here, a bit of an example. Sales leads. Client wants more sales from their campaign. They use their website to gather leads to make their sales team happy so they can call the client and get some sales. The sales representative will then go to an appointment, and the appointment may lead to a sale at some point in the future. The sale is only closed once the contract is signed. What are we optimising for? Let's have a think about that. What are the factors involved in that? So come back to it. We need to get sales leads into a sales pipeline. We have to send salespeople out onto the ground. They have to get that and close the lead and then make a sale. What are our factors? Any ideas? Let's just think this through quickly. What sort of questions might we ask to understand this problem?
How do you allocate the leads?
How do you allocate the leads?
The appointments?
Yep.
How do you measure the appointment turn-up rate?
Yep, possibly.
All those sorts of questions.
Yeah. The big one I would like to ask first up is how much capacity do you have to grow? Like how many more leads do you need to have? I'm probably going to have some answers here. Yeah, how many more appointments does your sales team need to make its targets? Now they might say, look, our guys are snowed. Like, we can't possibly do more appointments. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about that. What's your closure rate? There's the question, the answers you've just posed there. Yeah, what's your closure rate? Okay, well, closure rate's only 5%. Well, how can we fix that? That's what we're optimising for. So it's quality of lead then becomes a problem, not quantity of lead. Now, if you're as one of my clients is saying, look, I've got a, how would he put it? He goes, I've got a stable. I've got $1 million payroll of racehorses that are just sitting there in the stable, chomping at the bit. I need as much food for them as I can. That's literally how he puts it. So he'll take any number of leads he can get, just because he needs these people to run as fast as they can. Others are much more, okay, I've got a small team, very highly focused. Let's get the quality over the quantity. Now that definitely is influential in how we design things like the form, isn't it? So if I'm going to, how would I assess the quality of a lead? Well, we might ask questions that we see as predictive of intent. I was at a data science meetup last night from the guys from Atlassian. Atlassian run a software program for bug tracking and managing projects in software. And they, sorry? Jira, yes, of course, yes, Jira. A lot of people use it. It's a great product. And they were looking at things like how predictive is the information that they gather from the trial form. And they showed the top company names that were in the fields that they filled out. Any ideas what they might have been? Test, exactly right. Test, system, dev, you know. And those sorts of ones are very predictive. They're not going to close. But if you put in a company name in that, well, there's a signal to say, look, there's more likely to close. So when the salesperson's about to pick up the phone to close a deal, if somebody's put test in that field, well, we're not going to pick that one up. And if they've got their Gmail address in there, we might rank a Gmail address below somebody with a company address when we pick up the phone. So the things like that we can optimise for. And this is conversion optimisation. It's not A/B testing. Okay, I'll skip ahead of that. There's many questions and the decks will be available there for later on. Now the key to this is we need to build customer journeys or user interaction stories or whatever you want to call them. They're a way that we can model how our sales processes work. And we can outline the touch points. And this is one on the health insurance. Now, you won't be able to read this unless you've got bionic eyes or something. It's, you've got, okay, go for it. Awareness, roughly speaking, 1 week. Research, so I need health insurance. Let's think about that for a moment. Why would you change your mind? Why would you suddenly say, I want health insurance?
It's a tax bill.
Got a tax bill, maybe, yeah? Anything else? Health scare, yes.
In which case your premium will
Yeah, they'll go up. Yeah, they like to take your money. Going to have a family. Yes, exactly right. Got married. Got your first major job. Starting to become responsible. Your parents stop paying the bills. It's usually some form of life change event. It's not like I woke up today, I want to buy health insurance, or equivalently, geez, I got that bill from that other one. Geez, I don't like those guys. I really hated that person on the call center. I'm changing. So the switches will be there as well, trying to get a better deal. Then we have the research phase, 2 to 3 weeks. Who is in the market? Well, let's just take that. How would we do it? I mean, what would be the first thing you do when you go to say, okay, I need a health insurance policy?
Price.
Well, before you get to price, what would you do? I mean,
What do I need? So what needs to be covered, right?
it was partially that, yeah, kind of go, okay, what level of cover might I have? Who's in the market?
Who are the players?
Yeah, who are the players? And how are we going to do that? We're going to research, we're going to Google, we're going to search, and who are we going to probably end up with? iSelect or one of those aggregators. And they're going to get the sale, they'll probably try and make the sale. And it's a complicated system, but what we're doing is narrowing our choice space down. We're going to come up with a couple of offers that we're then going to evaluate which is better for us. We're not going to try and evaluate 20 offers, because our head's just going to blow up when we try and do that, unless you like spreadsheets and doing analysis like me. So then we're getting into the choice reduction phase. So we're narrowing our scope down. Now, I can tell you, and I've worked with health insurance and insurers for a long time, this is complicated. And I can tell you, I would argue, and I've said this to a couple of my clients, I will put money on the table, you turn AdWords off, will not make a single bit of difference to your business. They're not going to do it. And you know why they're not going to do it? Because they're not going to get rewarded for saving that $100,000 a month if their sales go down. So they're quite happy to say, look, company money, $100,000 goes to Google's pockets, whatever that number might be, it's a big number. They don't get rewarded for reducing that number. So they're going to be fearful about turning that off. I need to help them to make decisions that are going to get their more throughput into their system, and they can only modify certain things. So it's a really, really complicated problem. We can play with things such as what do we offer. We can play with things like how do we change pricing. We've got to play with things like how do we differentiate that offer in a market space. None of these are A/B testing on landing pages. They're much more complicated than that. And then finally, we get to purchase. And again, I can tell you, for most of my customers in this market, I can tell you that you know, their most highest channel is direct or brand-related search. What else can I tell you about? Nothing. How did they come to that decision? I don't know. But this part of the process back here probably spanned many devices in many days, and not least of which is sitting on the boss's time at lunch doing it, because that's, you know, trying to get these things done, then closing at home. We're never going to model that, so we've got to take smarter approaches to how do we measure that using tools like Google Analytics. It can be done, I promise it can be done, but it's complicated. Now the big thing about this is gathering evidence. We need to find indicators of performance or an effect. And a book I'll thoroughly recommend, I've got a reading list on my website about this stuff, but a book I'll thoroughly recommend is How to Measure Anything by the author Douglas Hubbard. And it's got this byline is measuring intangibles in business. Because you can measure pretty much anything, because if something's real, there is an effect. And you don't need to be super accurate. You probably need less data than you think you do if you know where to measure and look. Once we have it, we start to build models. Now, climate change, that's a good topic, isn't it? Climate change is, you know, all the models. We've got the models. We run the models are wrong. There's a great statistician I like a lot called George P. Box, whose quote goes along the lines of, all models are wrong, some are useful. And that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for models that describe things that help us to make decisions. It doesn't mean they're absolutely deadly accurate. It does mean, however, it gives us a process by which we can make a decision that will give us a way of measuring the output and seeing whether that influences the system as a whole. Now, if you are trying to do this for other people, or even if you're trying to get it done within your organisation, you really should start to think about your recommendations after you've done this and you've built your model and say, hey, I need to do A, B, and C. We need to rank them in order of these quadrants. The effort and cost versus the value and return. Now, I can guarantee you, if I turn up to my clients and say it's going to cost you $1 million and it's going to make $1,001, they're not going to be terribly happy about that. So I don't want to be playing in that quadrant there. I want to be playing in this quadrant here up front, because if I can get something that's low cost and high value, I get credibility. I can then move upwards into the high cost, high value stuff up here, but I'll never go there first because that's going to take a lot of effort, a lot of money to get a result. So I need to get some low-hanging fruit, you know, we're going up with those sort of statements to say, okay, I can do something now, and it's not going to cost $1 million, and I can see that you can get confidence in what my decision making is with your site. And then we run experiments, but only at this point. And an experiment may or may not be an A/B test. There are many ways that we can run experiments. I won't go into experimental design, but it's a whole topic in and of itself. But the A/B test is the one we know and love. So let's say I've got a particular way I want to see a form being rendered. I can compare one form version versus the control. Or I can compare multiple form versions versus the control. And there's maths and stats that we can run on that to say whether there is actually a real difference between them. But that's a topic for probably a very much longer session. It's one I'll just leave you with, but hypothesis testing is the gold standard. And even when the gold standard people do it, they get it wrong too. So it's a little bit, we've got to be very cautious about it. Now, getting started, well, your tools of trade, Google Analytics, absolutely prime. Excel, kind of very, very powerful tools. We know, master it. It takes a lot of mastering. This one takes a bit of mastering, that one takes a lot of mastering. If you're very much inclined, there's the R statistical language. That's for the deep end techies, but very powerful, can do anything. And for the rest of us, you've got these other tools at the top which will provide you with a web interface so you can set up your tests and run them. But your Google Analytics is your first tool of choice, unless of course you're using something like Site Catalyst or another high-end tool there. And that is me done. So thank you very much for your attention. Apologies for having to speed it up a little bit.